We are talking about Claridge, Pennsylvania. Sort of bringing up the how, when, where, and why about it. Why was there Claridge? How did it get there? How long has it been there? In putting together the story of Claridge, I get the feeling that there are some missing pieces. Some of these things I put together, and I have the feeling that it's pretty much straight story, that you have it from the people who were there and who started the place. With the story of Claridge, it's not quite that way. It's not quite all that complete. The people who started Claridge were really not into starting a town and living there. They were into making money. Those guys were into doing real estate deals and making money in coal. And to put it very simply, about 3 months after they got the thing set up at Claridge, in the mid-1880s, they simply sold out to a larger coal company and moved on to other deals. What we have to talk about are the brothers Klein, the Klein brothers, two of them. They grew up about 2 miles away from the town of Claridge, up around Bouquet. They grew up on a farm up there, and one was born in 1843. That was Amos. Amos was pretty much the prime mover on the getting a railroad up the valley from Manor and getting a mine started and a town started up there. Amos and his brother were the two, we can call them profiteers. That's what they were, basically what they were doing. They were making money. Amos's brother William was a Greensburg physician. He was a doctor, Dr. William Klein. And the both of them had grown up just a couple miles away from where they started a town. And growing up in that area, without doubt, they knew that it was a place where there was a lot of coal. As a matter of fact, back as far as 1860s, we can see a coal mine operating at the place that would become Claridge. But it wasn't Claridge until the 1880s. There were 2 mines there. There was more than just one. And as time went on, there were actually 3 mines at Claridge. And in the next part of this little production, I'm going to show you some pictures where I'll show you the mines and where they developed and how things spread out in a way to become what became known as Claridge. Claridge's largest population time, the time when it was booming, shall we say, was that period between 1910 and 1920. The most people that were ever at Claridge were about 2,500 people living there. Now, to get a place started where there's a mine, you have to have a railroad going. I mean, you can have a mine, but it's never going to amount to much unless you have a railroad. And Amos Klein worked for a while in Pittsburgh. He worked for a guy who was a railroad builder. And in Pittsburgh, he had access to people like Robert Pitcairn. Robert Pitcairn was the superintendent of the Pittsburgh division of the Pennsylvania Railroad. And it should come as no surprise when you find out that the person who named Claridge was none other than Robert Pitcairn. He named the town after the place in Scotland where he had been born. And the mine up there was called the Denmark Mine, which name came not from Robert Pitcairn, but from the fact that the place was on part of what's known as the Denmark Manor. Now we know there's a town there called Manor, where the railroad took off of the main line to go up to the mine at Claridge. But that town of Manor has the name Manor because in Westmoreland County, there are two places that were the manors of the early Penn family, which means when the Penns opened a land office to sell property, they retained certain areas in Pennsylvania that they weren't willing to sell. They were called manors. And the manor out there where the Claridge mine is was called the Denmark Manor. Thus, when the Klein brothers get the mine going, they give it the name Denmark because it was sitting on this manor called Denmark. Now the Kleins had 90% of the stock value of this mine. That leaves about 10% for people like Coulter and Huff and maybe some more. I think they brought them in simply for name recognition because these were local movers and shakers in the coal business, and they would encourage other people to get interested in the venture. And what we're going to do next now is I'm going to show you some pictures of the town of Claridge, the mine, and kind of give a picture of how it happened, how it grew up, and what's there and what's not there. And we're going to shut this part of it down right now. Now we get to look at some pictures. And we're looking at the territory where Claridge is located. This is Claridge up here, right north of Bushy Run Battlefield. And incidentally, the stream that goes through Claridge is called Bushy Run, right next to history. Now, there is one important feature on here that really doesn't show up well. It's the old main line of the Pennsylvania Railroad, and I'm pointing it out. This is really the reason that a lot of these places are here. The main line of the old Pennsylvania Railroad was built in the 1850s, and if that weren't built, these places called Irwin, Manor, Penn, Jeannette would not be here. The main line runs from over here, coming over this way through Jeannette, over through Greensburg, and on. Right up here, one place along the main line is Manor, and there's a valley that goes up from Manor. It takes Bushy Run up here, right up to Claridge, and it was along this valley that the Manor Valley Railroad was built. Actually, the Manor Valley Branch Railroad. That's the railroad that was built to service the new town of Claridge, because Claridge had a mine. There was also passenger service on that, on every day except Sunday. Now this is a part of Penn Township. Down here is Manor. And this map is from 1867, and that was before Claridge existed, and it was before the Manor Valley Branch was put in. But right from Manor, going up along this stream, Bushy Run, that railroad would be built the whole way up to right here. This place right here, this is where we would see this is the place right here where Claridge will be built in about 20 years. You can see a guy named William Kirkers already has a mine there. That symbol means there's a mine. Coal bank is simply an old name for a mine. If you see an old map that says coal bank, that means there's a mine there. Because mines started out with coal banks. There were banks where the vein of coal would come to the surface, and they would start picking it out there, and then eventually they would dig into it and it become a mine. Now, right up above this place that would become Claridge was Bouquet. And right up here you can see the Kleins, Klein. These are the farms. Over here where the Klein brothers were born and grew up. They were the fellows who started the town of Claridge. Now this guy, Mr. Pitcairn, superintendent and general agent of the Pennsylvania Railroad, he was the superintendent of the Pittsburgh Division. And he was the guy who the Klein brothers obviously got help from, because he named the town of Claridge. He gave it the name of the place in Scotland where he grew up. Actually, where he was born. He came to America when he was a kid and worked with Andrew Carnegie. They were both young kids, not very well off, and both of them did well. This just shows you, you know, on a topo map, Jeanette Manor, and coming up the creek, this is Claridge. And I want to enlarge it just a bit. Bushy Run, right here. That's the battlefield. Right above there, you see Claridge. It has this part out here to the east. That's called Q-Town. In the middle, this was the beginnings. That's where the mine, Denmark mine, was. And then over in this area, another mine, the Claridge mine, which started out about 1891, a bit later. But this whole configuration eventually became known as Claridge. This just to show you, 1917, this black line is the main line of the railroad. The red lines are the railroad, or the highways. The highways were a big deal at this point because cars were just becoming popular. And you come up here, Walthour, you don't hear about that anymore. One of the really old fellows in the 1700s had a grist mill there on the stream. And it comes up to Claridge. That's the Manor Valley Railroad branch coming up to Claridge. I like maps. It helps to kind of figure things out. This is from 1928. It shows the mine, part of the Denmark mine at Claridge. This is a map I put together to help understand the mine at Claridge. I tried to make some sense of a much larger, or it was more complicated map. I put this together simply to help us understand it. You see, this is the map. Coke Oven Mike Mance came up with this map from the 1890s, and it doesn't just have things on the surface; it has things underground. The mine's engineer made this map to help understand how the mine above ground related to what was down underground. You see the passageways underground where they cut coal out. Now I'll go backwards just a bit here. See, this was the powerhouse at the mine. They were actually making electricity. They had a boiler house right here, and it made steam, which was transferred over to the powerhouse, where that steam was used to turn steam engines, which then turned generators, which made the electricity to run everything at the mine. Here is going in the mine, and this is where it would come out of the mine and put the coal in a tipple where it would load it on railroad cars. And I think we've said enough for this particular one. We're going to have more on Claridge, and I'm going to push another button here that'll shut it down. And we'll see you again for number 2 on Claridge. Bye now.